So some of you may remember in a video from last year, I bought my first ever Glock, and it wasn't a new model Gen 5 or anything really exciting. The first Glock I ever picked up is this Glock Model 23 in 40 Smith & Wesson. This is kind of the mid-size frame Glock. This one, because of what it is in my state, I can only buy Gen 1 or Gen 2 Glocks. They don't really allow Gen 3, 4, and 5s because they were never drop tested, so we have to get ones that were manufactured, I think, prior to 1994, and this one falls inside that category. So again, the beauty of this for me is the 40 Smith & Wesson are a lot cheaper to buy than the 9mm. So originally I either wanted a Glock 17 or a Glock 19, but I couldn't afford one. So I ended up getting this Model 23. And then in addition to shooting 40 Smith & Wesson, you can buy replacement barrels for these that are actually made. You can read that. It says 23 9x19. So this is a conversion barrel, and it drops right into the gun and changes it from a 40 Smith & Wesson to a 9mm. And then the beauty of that is, because the mag well is the same, I can now use a Glock 19 mag, and this is an ETS brand 9mm 10-round mag. That guy slides right in there, and again, with that barrel in this gun, I can shoot 40 Smith & Wesson or 9mm out of it. The only things I've really done to improve on this gun since I bought it, I put in a new factory replacement recoil spring assembly, because you never know how these things were treated. And then I also put in an extended magazine release. It's a Ghost brand magazine release, and it makes it work pretty well. I also put the plug in the bottom of the grip just because I didn't like that hole. And then some of the magazines I got have a little Pierce grip adapter on here to take up this bump in the front of the magazine well, because I don't really like having my fingers riding on that hole. So the magazines, if you look at the ETS mags, I mean not the ETS, but if you look at the Pierce grip extension, that's what it looks like in the gun. So it takes up that complete area in the front of the gun, gives you a really good purchase on this. So that's my Glock 23. Now again, after getting this, I still had a desire to get a Glock 17 because I have the Kel-Tec Sub 2000 and I have the Ruger PC carbine. So I always kept my eye out for Glock 17. And, you know, the assault weapon ban I knew was going to be coming. I'd been keeping my eyes open for a long time. Couldn't really find one that I wanted. I did look around for quite a few months. I found some that were on clearance. They were like police trade-ins. And I went to a shop and looked at them, and they were all gone. So I asked if they had something else in stock, which might be something else that's compatible, and they just so happened to have one. So there's my Glock 23 with the 9mm conversion barrel. And again, because I can only buy Gen 2 and older firearms, and the Glock 17s that I was looking at were gone, I ended up picking up, quite a while ago, a Glock 22. Now again, Glock 22 and 23, both 40 Smith & Wesson, not really what I wanted, but this is the more compact size with the shorter grip. This one is the full size with a full grip on there. So now I have something that I can get all three of my fingers very easily on. It's a full-size gun, gives you a good purchase on it. This particular one already had the Glock extended slide release on there, which is actually, even though it's only a tiny little shelf, that makes all the difference in the world. This one, again, I did get a Ghost Incorporated extended magazine release. Takes about a minute and a half to put in, very simple to put in. I also picked up some additional parts. I picked up a NDZ brand, which these guys are out of Connecticut. I picked up a captive recoil assembly, but anytime I buy one of these older generation that are, 20, 30 years old, I like to change the recoil spring in there just to make sure that it's at least modern. So I got that NDZ brand captured recoil spring assembly with the stainless steel guide rod. And then I picked up another extended magazine or a slide release like this one that I'm actually going to go ahead and put in my 22. So I don't really do a whole heck of a lot to upgrade these, but knowing that I still wanted, again, a Glock 17 style gun, what I was able to find, being that this is a 22 and it's a full size, it will take Glock 17 magazines. This is a Magpul 10 round Glock 17 magazine. Slides in there just like a Glock 19 mag would fit in the 22 or the 23. A Glock 17 mag fits in the Model 22. And just like I did with the 23, I picked up a 9x19 conversion barrel for the Model 22. Now, both of these I bought from the same place, the barrels, that is, an online auction place. I really can't tell you where it is. So you can kind of figure out where it came from and if you wanted to pick one up yourself. Now, when I originally had the Model 23, I bought a different conversion barrel. It didn't fit in the slide. So this particular one from the seller that I bought this one from, this one drops in, it functions 100%. You've seen videos using the 9mm conversion on this guy, works 100% on that. So this barrel I bought from the same seller on the online marketplace that I bought it from. It's effectively exactly the same barrel as the other one I bought from the same seller. I assume they're made by the same manufacturer, and this one drops in and works exactly the same as this one. So I like this mainly because, you know, the 40 Smith & Wesson, I know it's kind of falling out of favor, but the fact that you can get a 40 Smith & Wesson firearm and a 9mm firearm in the same package, I'm a big fan of getting more for your money. So, you know, these in most states you can buy them really cheap. In the state I live in, because these are pre-bans and those are the only ones we can buy, these usually cost between $500 and $600 just for the firearm. Then you can look to spend about another 70 bucks on the barrels to convert it over to 9mm, and then you just need to buy some 9mm mags. So the good thing is Glock 17, Glock 19 mags you can buy really cheap on the open market. If you're in a free state that doesn't have restrictions on the magazine capacity, you can buy tons and tons and tons of Glock magazines for cheap, cheap money. And you have the flexibility to be able to do pretty much whatever you want with these. They do also sell 22 long rifle conversion kits for the Glock 22. I've heard mixed results about them. Some of them are better than other ones. I don't particularly know which ones are the good ones and which ones are the bad ones, and I'm not even sure I'm going to attempt to get one, although I probably could because I can't buy new manufacturer Glocks in my state, and especially with the assault weapon ban that was just passed here, I may not be able to buy any semi-automatic firearms for a long time. So the title of this video is The Last Semi-Automatic Firearm I Purchased Before the H.4885 Gun Ban of Massachusetts, or something like that. And that's because, you know, even though I bought this a while back, this really was the last semi-automatic handgun I bought before the ban went into effect, and it might be the last one I buy for a while. So even though it's an old Gen 2 Glock, and if you look closely at it, the back of this frame, or the back of the slide, is hammered. I mean, I don't know the history of this particular gun. I don't know if this was a police trade-in. It's possible that it could have been. It's definitely not been kept the greatest. This would have had, I think, a tritium insert in the front sight. The insert is completely gone and the front sight is hollow. This one is also such an old generation firearm that the front sight is actually, I think it's like swaged in there. So they basically push it through the slide and then they smash it with a pin to peen it open to hold it into the slide. So this one's not very easy to replace, although they do make replacement ones with a little spacer and then a screw that goes through the slide. It's not quite as easy as the newer generation ones that just have a screw holding that sight in the front. But again, the benefit of this, if you buy $60, $70 barrel and you can drop it into the gun, you have a 40 Smith & Wesson gun and a 9mm gun. Uses your standard Glock 22 magazines, your standard Glock 17 magazines, and then again with the Model 23, you get the additional benefit. You can use the Glock 23 40 Smith & Wesson magazines with the 9mm barrel. I can use a Glock 19 magazine, and I can also use a Glock 17 magazine. So the Model 23 is even a little bit more versatile because it accepts more different size magazines for different guns. However, both of these are a great option if you want the flexibility of shooting 40 Smith & Wesson and 9mm. Again, if it's something that you're concerned about in an SHTF situation, you have the flexibility to potentially pick up more calibers. I think there are still some police departments that use 40 Smith & Wesson and 9mm, not interchangeably, but there are certainly departments that use both. Or in the end of the world situation, I know a lot of people still have 40 Smith & Wesson ammo, and a lot of people have 9mm. 9 is probably the most prevalent caliber that's out there for handguns. So even though, again, these are outdated by most people's standards, they're what I can get. And I now have, Glock 17 compatible gun, Glock 19 compatible gun, 22 that shoots 40 Smith & Wesson, 23 that shoots 40 Smith & Wesson, and I have magazines that I can interchange between both my Ruger PC carbine and my Kel-Tec Sub 2000. So if I was ever in an SHTF situation, I could have two backpacks, one of them with a Glock 22 with the 9mm barrel and the PCC carbine, and the other one with the Glock 23 with the Kel-Tec Sub 2000. I can carry all Glock 17 magazines with me, all loaded up with 9mm, whether it's hollow points or round nose or flat nose, whatever I choose, and I can interchange the magazines between all the guns. And that's really the benefit of doing this. So again, just a little kind of silly video. I know it probably went on longer than most people have an attention span for, but there are inexpensive and really good upgrades out there that you can buy for these to make them a lot more flexible and last a lot longer, even though these particular handguns are probably 30 years old. They're still viable options, and I think they're worthwhile getting. Again, if it's all you can get is a 30-year-old semi-automatic Glock 22 and it runs nice and it's reliable, that's all that really matters to some people. I mean, again, there's people out there that have to have the newest and the greatest thing, but in my particular case, I took what I could get. So that's going to do it for this edition of Cranky Gun Reviews. I know some of you, it's probably going to be a boring subject. Some of you probably hate these old Glocks, and I'm not a Glock fanboy by any means, any stretch of the imagination, but I can appreciate the history of them, and I can appreciate that in most cases, they are very reliable. I don't think they're perfect. I think they do break down. You've seen me on video with this 23 where I have failure to eject, and I don't know if it's because the new recoil spring that I put in there, it hasn't been broken in yet or whatnot. I could put the original one back in and see if it does any better. But from my standpoint, I just think they're cool because of the history, and I'm not that great with the actual grip angle of these things. I tend to shoot, I think, lower than normal or higher than normal. I think lower than normal with these. I don't know why I tend to point them a little bit lower, but it's something you got to practice with. If it's the only gun I had, if I practice with it all the time, I could be as proficient with that as anything else I have in my collection, and I'm fairly confident with these. So again, thanks for watching another edition of Cranky Gun Reviews, and another edition on these old Glocks. And again, the last semi-automatic firearm I purchased before the Massachusetts gun ban. Make sure you support your 2A rights. Get out there and vote. Please vote. Get out there and shoot. Make sure if someone asks you to give up some of your freedom for the greater good, you remind them that freedom is always the greater good. Have a great night.